if at all, from your previous book, The Chanakya Niti and Modi?
Thank you so much, Mr. Bansal. It's an honor to be on the stage with you, and thank you to IAAC for inviting me. I guess the main reason I wrote the book was to get a discussion going, maybe to be slightly provocative, maybe to force people to rethink their assumptions. And I'm glad that in some way, maybe that was your first reaction as well. That why is she saying this or why is she writing this? The book actually flows from my previous book. Foreign policy has always interested me. That's my passion. But foreign policy is not an independent entity. Foreign policy of any country is based on domestic politics. It's based on that country's history, its civilization, its economy, its military, and at the end of the day, its sense of self. How does that country, its leaders, its people, how do they see that country? And when I wrote my previous book, From Chanakya to Modi, I sort of, through the course of reading that, I realized that, yes, Indians do want to be on the global high table. India does believe it has a right to be not just on UN Security Council, but one of the few global powers. But just desiring that does not make it happen. Why is it that 7 decades after independence, why is it that people still talk about India as an emerging power, a rising power, to be global power, to be great power, to be Asian power, but we are not that as yet? Why is it? What holds us back? Is it purely because we don't want to be that? No, that's not true. We have always wanted. Then is it economic? Is it human capital? Is it military? Is it what people call grand strategy? And so this book was written both to put forth what I believe are some of the challenges India faces domestically and in its goals, and maybe to convince India's leaders and India's elite and India's business community, India's politicians, that there are things India needs to do. And we need to start doing them if we want to become a global player.
True. So in your first chapter of introduction, you talk about the rise in nationalism as a major problem in its engagement with other countries. In democracy, people choose the direction, really. Have we not seen the same all over the world? This phenomena of nationalism has been voted in by people. Why should India be any different?
I will give two separate answers. One, I'll say as an Indian, we've always believed we are different, right? India is unique, India is special. India is one of the few post-colonial countries which actually never had military coup. Few post-colonial countries which has been democratic right from 1947. Conducted elections, much better than most other countries around the world, built an economy, built institutions, has a military which is large but not trigger happy, has never sought to take over the territory of other countries. So we have been different and we've always prided ourselves on being different. But coming back to the broader question of nationalism, yes, there's been a rise in nationalism, populism, and protectionism all over the world, not just in Asia, but Europe, United States, many other countries. But at the end of the day, what the public believes is dependent on what its leaders tell them. There are politicians and there are statesmen. Politicians are those who cater to what the public says. Statesmen are those who come out, or stateswomen, are those who come out and inform the public on what it is that will benefit the country. And at the end of the day, those countries succeed where nationalism is in some ways tempered by its institutions, by its society, by its norms. Nationalism which runs awry does create challenges, especially in a country which is only 7 decades old as a modern state, not a civilization, and where its institutions are still building and developing. So should one have pride in being an Indian? Yes. But should one temper that pride with what is required to be done? Yes. That is how I see the difference. That, India does not have to follow the norm. India can be different. And India also needs to bear in mind that domestic policy or politics is not just domestic. It has an impact on your foreign policy. It has an impact on your relations with your neighbors. It has an impact on your relations with your friends and your rivals.
True. You talk a lot in the book about cow protection as a major flaw. Religion and religious values always play a major role in most civilizations. Can you imagine Pakistan or any of the 58 Islamic nations accepting, say, pig farming as a source of meat because it's a viable business model? Or, to be very nasty, dogs can be used as a source of meat in US. But no. Why are many in India wrong in their traditional call for cow protection?
So I agree. Social norms matter. I will put it in a different concept. I'm speaking with everybody on a Mac right now. What is the use of owning an Apple Mac or an iPhone if my asset has no terminal value? You're a businessman. We own products. We want to sell them or give them away for charity. But at the end of the day, an asset I own should have a value. Value to me while I use it, and a terminal value when I want to get rid of it. The problem isn't necessarily with cow protection. The problem isn't with saying that I personally do worship the cow and would not like the cow killed. The problem comes when, a society can be religious, a society can be conservative, an individual can be religious and pious. The state, however, should be non-confessional. Because when the state starts telling individuals what they can or cannot do and not protecting people, that is when the problem starts. So Hindus, those who do not want to, those who want to protect the cow, they can create goshalas and keep cows there. Going out in vigilantes and killing people because they are carrying a cow is a problem. And we are not comparison with Islamic countries has a problem and a flaw. How many of those Islamic countries actually are growing at the GDP that we want to grow at? How many of them have the democratic norms that we espouse? How many of them are part of the Indo-Pacific strategy or Quad that we are a part of? India is different. India has potential. India has opportunities. India should be comparing itself with countries like the United States. So the example I would give here is people may not agree with a Hollywood film, but will I shut down Silicon Valley because I don't agree with the film which was made by Bollywood? No, by Hollywood. Maybe I should produce another film. As I tell people, if you don't agree with the views in my book, please write another book and challenge my assumptions. Don't say that you don't agree with my book and the book should be burnt. The answer to that is write another book. So cow protection, protect the cow. The individuals can do it, non-profits can do it. The state coming into it, vigilantes coming into it. And the third part is you are a businessman. You will understand the concept of market economics. If you have a large leather industry, either shut down the leather industry. How is that leather industry with the 1 million people associated with it going to function? Either say that no, we will not have a leather industry. I'm fine with that. But then find some other way that those 1 million people will have job opportunities, will be re-skilled. Social norms and religious norms should not be allowed to hurt the functioning of market economics or of the economy of the society. We should find a way in which we can keep our norms without either leading to law and order problems or hurting economics.
So, actually, in your chapter on ancient culture and modern times, you mention about the senseless talk about the scientific achievements of our very past, the social unrest, or senseless things like reaction to movies you just talked about. But is it not true all over the world that a small portion of society is what we could call crazies? To many, US make India in US make India great again is equal to make US white again.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference between, you'll always have some crazies, and how do you differentiate?
So yes, every society has crazies and every society will. You cannot eliminate them. The question is, do they remain on the fringe? And are the institutions and law and order sort of, firm enough to ensure that if some incident happens, they will be. I'll give you two examples, Mr. Bansal. I don't know. I'm sure you recall some years ago, and this was during the Obama presidency, a young boy in Texas was arrested because he had taken he built a clock and took it to school, and some people thought that it was actually a bomb.
Yes, he was a Muslim student.
Right? Because he's Muslim. Yeah. So at that, I remember President Obama tweeted and asked the boy to bring that clock to the White House. The message I got, and many others got, that the President of the United States cannot be in every police station and school. But he or she can send a message that this is not what US is about. So the same thing that, things will happen. There will be crazies, but sort of when a Muslim is killed or lynched for not saying Jai Shri Ram, or a Muslim is killed because he is taking a cow on the street, do local authorities act against those people? Do politicians or thought elite come out and say, this is not India? That is what I would say is the difference. I am sort of, nobody can be everywhere, and crazies will be everywhere. The question is, what does the broader society do, and how do people react to something which is happening? So yes, a film was made, there was a reaction. But I will give a more recent example. For quite some time, while China was sitting on the Indian border since April, most of the India media's attention was on the suicide of a Bollywood actor. Instead of focusing on China, instead of focusing on India's military potential, instead of focusing on foreign policy, focusing on economic growth, most of the focus was on something, and that's a diversion, right? So yes, it could happen on social media, but why should the Indian mainstream media focus so much on that? It was a diversionary tactic, but those are some of the examples that maybe what we need to do is we will have the crazies, but do at least 50 or 60% of the rest talk about issues which matter?
So I'm going to, flowing from the same thing, you talk about secularism, which was chosen, and you give credit to Nehru. But let me ask you this, why pass only Hindu laws and no other religion? How can a country be called secular and the rule of law with that when you have different laws for different people solely based on religion? Can you imagine laws in US which apply only to blacks or whites? And how do you tackle that issue?
I mean, I agree with you. And I did mention in my book that, yes, the aim at that time should have been to start off with to continue down and basically have a uniform civil code. The idea of a uniform civil code was originally an idea with the liberals and the secular and the progressive Indians. It didn't really it didn't really occur, and now the reverse has happened, right? So uniform civil code is not championed by the liberals, is championed by the opposite side, and that is sad. There should be a uniform civil code. I think the reason why it didn't happen was the tremendous amount of resistance which happened to the Hindu code during the 1950s that Nehru faced, plus the growing concern which they had, right or wrong, that because of partition, the Muslim minority felt under siege. And so they did not implement it. Over a period of time, I don't think any politician really cared about uniform civil code because it became just routine domestic politics. And nobody wanted to sort of, nobody, there are very few statesmen who thought, okay, I will come out and say uniform civil code is what is required, and I may risk losing elections or may risk losing a constituency, but I will do it. And it's unfortunate it hasn't happened. Should India have it? Yes. Should India have it in the coming year or two? I don't know. And I will confess I'm on the fence on this. Not because, I mean, I am a liberal. I'm sure you sense that from my book. Yeah. But my question is that any religio-cultural change, which is of a large magnitude, requires some societal support. And I'll use an example. I mean, abortion here in the US is a big issue. Doesn't matter which side of the divide you come, it becomes a very big issue. And so, sort of, if you want to change the abortion law in this country, you will need a broader societal consensus. Which is why here most states have different laws. The federal government has a different law. It's a different country. In India, there will need to be broader consensus before you implement something like uniform civil code. Otherwise, you will have even people who should support it coming out against it.
Very true, very true. In your chapter on human capital, you have praised, and rightly so, the arrangements made during the Kumbh Mela. Me and my wife fortunately participated against my strong vote against it. Kumbh Melas, to me, were known for their chaotic place, and thousands of people were lost and trampled and all kinds of things. But my wife overruled me and we did go. And I must say, I was absolutely taken aback with the cleanliness, the food arrangements, and greatly organized traffic and all services. And I literally became a big fan of Yogiji and started to believe that ever than before that a proud and devoted leader were running the country, India will rise to the greatness. The question I have for you is, where were those great leaders? Why things were chaotic for the last 70 years? Any comments? Do you see any changes?
I agree with you. I mean, Mr. Bansal, I mean, Kumbh Mela is a wonderful example, but I would actually let's go back 3,000 years. The Indus Valley civilization after which India is named. Indus Valley civilization had a granary. They had a public bath. They also had, sort of bathrooms inside houses. Drains were covered and streets were built at perpendicular angles so that they would be cleaned by the wind. A country which inherited a civilization 3,000 years old, which did all this, why have we been unable to provide electricity, clean water, sanitation, basic health care, and literacy to our people? It doesn't have to do with anything other than priorities over the years. It has to do with lack of investment. Yes, we have wonderful universities, and both you and I are products of the tertiary education of India. But we didn't really invest in primary schools. We have wonderful hospitals, whether they are public or private sector, but we don't have the primary health care. So primary health care, primary schools, just basic infrastructure. So, right, I mean, there's a great Yamuna Expressway all the way to Taj, a Taj Expressway. But what about just the basic roads, the airports, so that companies can actually set up factories and then be able to send their products to the airport or the nearest port and export or import. So we have not really invested in either the physical infrastructure or the human capital. And it's basically been, if you don't, I mean, as you know well, you need to invest in primary education today to have the benefit 2 decades from now. And it's never been something which is a priority for a politician who's running for elections. And it's not something which is demanded of politicians when they go to the public. So it's never been a priority, never been much investment or money in it. I do believe that there have been some changes in the last few years, but I believe that if we can do Kumbh Mela, all of UP should be able to have it. Why should it only happen once in 3 years or 6 years? It's because the Indian government often functions better in a mission mode. So you tell me that this city needs something, I can do it. But if you tell me the entire state needs to do it, I am not able to do it. That's because it requires strategic planning. It requires me thinking that the metro I am building for Delhi should not be for Delhi's population of 2020. It should be for Delhi's population of 2040. Right?
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the metro is for the Delhi's population of 2010. The problem is that the planning which most countries do unfortunately does not happen. I mean, I jokingly say it, but half serious, half joking, that a country with a 5,000-year-old civilization does not really plan that strategically in most areas.
Well,
and we need to do that. Sorry.
But what role did UK, United Kingdom, play in draining India of all the education and the resources that when we started, we literally had no educational institutions, no, I remember in UP where my parents came from, my father came from, the school was turned into a military training center and all the kids were sent home.
Yeah. No, I mean, I accept your point that, I think it was 11% or 12% literacy rate. But I will just give 2 examples. Bangladesh became independent in 1971. Their literacy rate is the same as ours. Their female empowerment, they are higher in the female empowerment or gender empowerment index than even Singapore, and way above us. Sri Lanka has a higher literacy rate than us. Why is it that our neighbors, who also were part of the British Raj, one of our neighbors who became independent 25 years after we did, has the same literacy rate, but a better female empowerment or a literacy index? There must be something that they did. It's something that we have not invested in. They have invested in their people. Yes, we faced a lot of challenges in 1947. But maybe is that one of the things, our priority was not primary school or primary healthcare. You look across all of Southeast Asia. You look at you look at South Korea or Taiwan. All of these countries have focused. So I would say we did not prioritize primary school or primary healthcare. And unfortunately, we have not invested enough resources in the last few decades in them either. And we need to do a lot more in that, because primary education and primary healthcare are critical if you want India has about 500 million labor force. Only 5 or 7% of that is skilled. Primary education would help at least to some extent, and so would basic skills. So I would say, yes, we did have handicaps, but we could have done better with those if our immediate neighbors did.
So talking along the same line, do you have any comments on, in the education of primary schools, what role organizations such as Akshay Patra and Ekal Vidyalaya, whom we support, have in the future of primary school education?
I would say 3 things. One, it is the government. I have never believed that the government can do everything. It's going to the private sector and the non-profit, which is going to be able to expand India's primary education and primary healthcare. So yes, so Akshay Patra and Ekala are doing a lot. They are also the organizations which can bring in innovation, right? So sort of, bring in innovative ways that you can access and you can provide education to people, to kids in rural areas or semi-urban areas. They can come up with ways in which you may not have access to a school, but is there some way that, using technology that maybe on the cell phone or in a local, television, the same channel which broadcasts cable or Doordarshan could also broadcast sort of courses or classes which could help educate people. So I believe that it is the non-profits and it is the private sector which is going to expand primary education and also primary healthcare in India. So the more they do, the sort of, more power to them.
I read your comment about the jugaad, which is so absolutely true. But due to the severe constraints of resources, financials, etc., materials, it was a great surviving tool. And India in general, and including me, were always taught to use our brain to do the jugaad, and we were rewarded by praises. I'm sure that method of no or little planning and getting the things done by the seat of the pants, that was the way to get paid off. On the other hand, it did make us not a long-term planners. Sab ho jayega was always the word used, and I'm sure that is affecting our planning process.
I agree. I mean, jugaad was great. Jugaad sort of, there's an Indianness to it. And yes, in many cases, that is the only option. I guess my criticism for it comes from two facts. One, jugaad is great, but we also need to move beyond jugaad, right? We need to sort of, we need to sort of learn from others. We also need to sort of, not just take what somebody else has made and adapt it. We need to think of something totally new, because that is when entrepreneurship will really blossom, is when we can come up with something which is Indian, something which is unique, which isn't an adaptation of what something else or what somebody else has done. The second part is it prevents this long-term planning, right? So in that, I sort of, there was a day and age, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I would say, or even the 90s, when jugaad was fine. When, our competitors and our friends were by and large like us. In a day and age when, for example, in the 50s, China's economic growth was slower than ours. Today, China's economy is 5 times our size. Its defense expenditure is 3 times ours. So the competition today has changed. Technology has changed. The world has changed. So today what we need to do is what the others are doing. We need to plan 15, 20 years out. We need to prepare for what China may be doing next, or Japan, or the United States. And for that, what we were doing traditionally will not help us anymore. Thinking outside the box, as they say, and thinking 40 years out or 100 years out requires sort of, moving sort of in some ways, shedding the traditional way of doing things. And that's where I think, we need to move beyond jugaad. For that, we need to, start sort of, realizing that the world has changed and will keep changing as technology comes, right? I mean, it's going to change. Every aspect of our life has been changed. This year is the best example. Every aspect of our life has been changed. And we don't know what's going to happen in the coming years, right? So what we need is, more out-of-the-box solutions, more out-of-the-box thinking.
True. Talk about economic potential. In the past, caste system was certainly a dominant force in India. The top leaders were Brahmin, we were ruled by Brahmins, and we were told that Brahmins. But in recent years, including the one when I was growing up, I saw a shift in thinking. I saw leaders from every walk of life. You see that Indians still have a bias against wealth generation, but I see that they have started to put the wealth generators on pedestals. I don't know if really the caste and anti-Banya feeling is still prevalent in at least what I see. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Bansal. So my broader argument sort of is, it's partly, yes, partly the caste base, but there's a broader argument to it, which is that at the end of the day, what does a society value? Does the society value, intellectual labor, or does the society value manual labor or labor by hand? And I'll give you a very sort of, an example. Many years ago, so my first visit to this country was when I was 8. My father came here for a 1-year fellowship, and so my brother and I came with him. And I noticed that, we were living in Boston for about 9 months. And I noticed that most of, my friends would, on the weekends, they would have these lemonade stalls, or they would be distributing newspapers. And I was 8 and I asked my parents, no, why would you do that? We went back to India, some years passed. Most sort of, when I came back for a PhD many years later, most sort of, it's changed in India now. I mean, I know that my nephews and nieces, have worked in a McDonald's or sort of, have do internships, co-ops and everything. But sort of at the end of the day, there's still this belief that, you should focus, if you have a summer break, you should take courses. Why are you working? And sort of, I do believe that you need to value, कहते हैं ना आटे दाल का भाव मालूम होना चाहिए. You need to value, sort of understand the value of money, understand the value of working and earning money. So my broad argument is that a society which does not appreciate labor, whether it's manual labor, making money, and wealth generation, does not understand that social policies or populist measures or sort of have an impact on economic growth. So yes, the Indian government believes that it must provide revenue, sort of jobs to create a number of people, which is why we are one of the few countries in the world where manufacturing is still dominated by MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium sector enterprises. We don't get economies of scale, unlike China or Bangladesh or Vietnam. We are one of those countries where sort of social policy, and the reason why I talked about the cow protection issue is your social policy is hurting economics. Again, protectionism, the desire to protect. Every country is protectionist to some extent. This country, which we are living, also has a protectionist. But most economists and most businesses will protest against it, because the more open you are, the better the economy does. The more integrated with the world you are, the better an economy does, and the more jobs are created. So my broader argument is that you need to understand, I will accept that no market behaves socially optimally. You need regulation and you need government supervision. But it doesn't mean that the private sector and that the market is going to function better because the government is going to sit on top of it.
Well, in order to become an economic power, you say that the controls, like you talked about, they have to be removed and things have to be made competitive. It's totally agreed upon. But do you think then democracy is a major deterrent in growth in the modern times? You say that the labor laws and land acquisition and corporate taxes probably are the three major contributors of future growth and investment. But in a democratic society, the government is always trying to please people and get elected. And and why would it be any different in India than anywhere else in the world?
I agree. I would say that, democracies do have high growth. Yes, I agree that, it's difficult in democracies to implement reforms. But my counter argument has always been that no Indian government has ever gone to the Indian public and said, we are implementing these reforms. There'll be a pain for 6 months to a year, but the economy will grow and you will all get better jobs. If Indians could go through demonetization and the pain which came with that, because they believed that it was for the greater good. I truly don't understand why Indians would not allow land reforms or labor market or financial market reforms if they were explained that 6 months to 1 year from now, the economy will do better. My counter argument is that the Indian leaders fear that the Indian public will not vote them back because if they implement economic reforms. We prefer to be pro-poor rather than saying pro-wealth generation, pro-making everybody rich, pro-faster economic growth. And I would say try it out. If you can try demonetization and the public can understand it, this cannot be worse than demonetization. This will actually have a faster impact. So go for it and try it. The popularity of the Indian Prime Minister allows him to do it. The fact that people sort of, believe he does have their interests in mind means that he can go for it. He can ask, he can say these economic reforms. Try it, we will know it.
You have a very good, very, very good argument there. After the World War II, there were two camps formed. No one knew which one would be better. Obviously, they were at one time they were. Of course, India couldn't decide and later leaned towards USSR, not perhaps by choice, but by force. In reality, much of India is aligned with the US. We are both democratic, we are both stable. That is, if chosen, we would have been in a different place. You gave an example of Japan and Italy that after the World War, look what they have done. But when I think about it, the amount of resources United States threw at them after the war is incredible. I have visited many times Italy and Japan, two of them, and they talk about all the American investment which was being made, the factories which were open, the jobs which were given to restore their country. How do you compare them to India, where practically no help was asked for or was given?
I agree, Mr. Bansal. I mean, I'm one of those who believes India made the right decision during the Cold War. I mean, I believe that India should not have joined, did not join either camp. It was a right decision because India is different. India sort of, India is more aligned to the United States, and we are friends, partners, allies, whatever phrase you use today. But India is that friend, partner, ally because India did not join the Cold War. India is that friend, partner, ally because we built our economy, we built our society, our politics, we kept the country together, we were different. We did not become a junior partner in any alliance. And even today, if we do in the end become an ally and move beyond the current alignment to an alliance, it will be as an equal partner. We are never going to be another country's junior partner. And yes, we are different. We are not like Japan or Germany or Italy or any of the other countries who received massive amounts of economic aid and even military assistance from the United States or even the Soviet bloc. Many countries, the Soviet Union gave money and military to. And it's good because, it's good that we did not receive all that military because it didn't make sense to join military alliances. We did receive economic assistance from the US and Soviet Union, but it was never that much as was given to other countries. So we learned to sort of, to do things on our own, in our own way. One of the examples I give people is when I used to teach at Boston University, I used to tell my students that go to an Indian grocery store and pick up Thumbs Up. because the story of Thumbs Up is a very interesting example, and I'm sure, and I know you know about it, which is that, when India sort of wanted Coca-Cola to transfer its black cola license, it did not, and so Coca-Cola and Pepsi left when we nationalized. But Indians didn't want a black cola drink. And so, Campa Cola sort of came and went, but Thumbs Up remained. And when Coca-Cola went back in the late 1990s, they actually bought Thumbs Up. And Thumbs Up is part of the Coca-Cola brand in India. But sort of, so there are things, there are ways, there are Indian companies which have brands around the world. They are well known, whether it's Tata's or, Reliance and others. And so it's good that we chose the path we did. I won't dispute that we should have been an ally, and I still won't say we should be an ally because, the world is different today, right? So we need to base our foreign policy on the world today and 15, 20 years from now, not what it was 30 years ago.
So many always compare growth of India to China. They are always compared. I think China has two advantages, which many, but at least I can think of two, which India does not. One is that it has total control on its, with the leaders have gotten rid of, they've got total control on population. Leaders have gotten rid of anything which is non-Chinese, which is not uniform. The Ugyars and the Tibetan annihilation, and I've seen that with my own eyes, is a testament to that. The other one is that India, US has provided incredible amount of resources in terms of factories and the money, etc., in China in order to get cheaper products. They had their reason. What's your view on that as to, how does India bypass or use that what they don't have in order to compete in the world?
So I'd say the following. One, yes, China managed to, keep a control on its population. But I would say they are facing a challenge now, right? When they are changing their one-child policy to two-child policy, and very few are willing to now change it. India actually used the democratic way to incentivize two children, right? Hum do, hamare do. It took a long time, but the positive part is that, our population growth is under control by and large today. More importantly, we don't have a graying population as yet. We have more people in the working age, and that will stay till about 2050. So we have an advantage. We have a demographic dividend. Yes, we need to invest in that dividend, education, healthcare, sort of infrastructure, and we also need to invest, especially in the 50% of the dividend, the female half, more of whom need to come out. But we have a dividend there, which we can use. Our human capital is our biggest advantage. We need to invest a little more in it. Second part is that yes, the United States, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea invested in China's growth. But the advantage we have today is that most of those companies from most of the countries are moving away from China. Right. They want a bigger market. They want a market where they can manufacture. They can get economies of scale. They want to decouple from China. The global supply chains will still need manufacturing done. India is the only country with a comparable working population, size, and it's not that far geographically for them to move their companies. So some have started to come to India. But I believe there's some of the reforms I would like India to do is primarily to bring those companies. Because once those companies come, if we set up those special economic zones, or we provide we sort of, deregulate, we will get those companies in the Indian market. And once they come, they will build the Indian economy. And that will actually help, right? All that investment coming in technology, skills, sort of for the working force. So that's the second advantage we have. Third is technology. Not just in the sense of technology that we use on a daily basis, but that China has in many ways integrated technology, not just in economy, but in its military. So cyber, space, AI. And the reason I keep talking about planning and strategic planning is because we need to do the same. India's one of India's success stories has been how the technology sector has grown in India. We do have world-class companies in the IT arena. Our space program is second to none. So what we need to do is integrate them in such a way that it benefits not just the economic arena, but the military, intelligence, strategic arena. And I think we have an advantage in this. We can do it right now because we have those sectors are well developed in India. And so we can leapfrog, as they say, right? We don't have a landline, we can go straight to the smartphone. And India is known for leapfrogging. So maybe we can do that as well.
So in the chapter of military and grand strategy, you say that India, if wants to be a global power, that it needs to start thinking in terms of even sending troops way beyond the immediate neighbor. Question I have is, do you think US, which has sent troops all over the world in last 50 years, has ever been successful anywhere? Last many years of entanglement has clearly shown that the military excursions, which are far away, only lands you misery and defeat.
I agree, Mr. Bansal. So I don't advocate for India to send troops. But what I do advocate is that India needs to be able to project power. And there, I don't say India should send troops to Afghanistan or to Iraq or to Southeast Asia. But it's like President Roosevelt said many years ago. Speak softly but carry a big stick. India needs to be able to. I mean, at the end of the day, what is a great power or a global power? I should be able to convince Mr. Bansal to do something because he believes that it is worth it for my friendship, right? I shouldn't have to force you to do it. You shouldn't do it because I am threatening troops on your border. So projecting power means that India's neighborhood of South Asia, the Indian Ocean region, should know that India has a big military which is capable of doing things. It doesn't have to be a trigger-happy military. It doesn't have to be a military which goes everywhere and is deployed. It is simply that it should be a military which is state-of-the-art equipment, which is modernized, which has the equipment, which has the technology, which has the self-awareness, which has the intelligence capabilities, whether that means armed drones, or it means aircraft carriers, or it means a military which may be smaller in size but more effective. Second, it means planning and coordinating with your friends and allies in the region. Having those military exercises, having cooperation and training facilities, having your you have your ports. They should be able to become bases. They don't have to be. You don't have to be China to counter China. You don't have to be a trigger-happy country. But just if you want to be respected in the region, make sure you have the economic power and the military capability that others say, yes, we will do this because India has asked us.
I think it is such an interesting topic. This book is a great source to know India's potential and the reasons which are holding it back. We can go on and on. And really absolutely enjoyed talking to you. And if anybody wants to understand the wrongs which have been done or are being done now, this book is for you. So I say to all people who want to know or love India to please buy the book, read it, and support India. I'd love to bring Gauravji to our conversation. Gaurav?
Anilji, thanks for leading this very fascinating conversation. Aparna, I mean, really, what can we say? As Anilji said, we could continue. This is an easy one. For our viewers, I would just say the book is out in the US on January 12th. But as always, you can pre-order it. I've already done that, and waiting to read it. But it's a very fascinating topic, near and dear to all of us, especially if we are from the subcontinent, but really defined, articulated, broken down very well, where you can make logic and sense out of it. So, Aparna, great job with the book. Thank you for giving us your time. Anilji, great leading. It was a great conversation you led. Thank you so much for that. Please stay safe.
Thank you so much, Anilji, and thank you, Gaurav. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much. I loved writing the book, and I'm so glad that people are enjoying reading it.
Great. Thank you, IAAC. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, IAAC.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Be safe.
Hello, I'm Neeli Lakhani, IAAC Literary Festival Director. I want to thank you for joining our award-winning authors and their wondrous stories. IAAC is a 501c nonprofit. Programs like the one you just watched happen because of contributions from generous folks like you. Please donate to the IAAC so that we can support our artists and sustain our cultural programs. It is simple to donate by visiting the IAAC website at iaac.us. Learn about the insider benefits that membership gives you. On behalf of the entire IAAC board, stay safe and see you at our next event. Thank you.